I pray every day from the presence of Spirit within for the truth to be revealed in our lives, for us to know that we can rise above any and all challenges and adversities in our lives. There is nothing that God cannot do for us by doing through us. Remembering we are all of one mind, we must open our hearts and minds to receive what God has for us. Thanking Him for this revealing, we know whatever it is we need or want, it is, and so it is.
So it is. So, hi, I'm Alex, and I will take you on a 3-minute meditation. I will ding the chime, and then I will ring it again when we are through with our meditation. But I wanted to tell you that today, in this book that Louise actually gave me, thank you, Louise. On January 10th, it says, "You are whole and perfect, just as you are. You are holy yourself, and that is the holy made visible. There is no one just like you. There never was or will be. You are precious to life and infinitely loved by the universe, just as no two blades of grass or two snowflakes are alike. You are an absolute original." So I thought you would like to take that into prayer. So let's go for a 3-minute meditation. So I leave you today with this wonderful prayer. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast that which is good. Render to no man evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Honor all men. Love and serve your God, rejoicing in the power of love. And so it is.
And so it is. And thank you, Alex, for that wonderful, beautiful meditation. And thank you, Louise, for your opening prayer. And now it's my delight to introduce our guest speaker, Reverend Kathleen Geier. Our theme, global theme, is timeless wisdom and evolutionary vision. And Reverend Kathleen Geier's live stream message today is grounded beyond the beginning. Her message is about remembering the foundational principles upon which our faith is built. We honor the many traditions which Science of Mind has used as springboards and delve into that deep truth behind these teachings, that all is one and always has been. Reverend Kathleen feels fortunate her parents introduced her to religious science as a teen. She was raised in Southern California, and she attended Redondo Beach and then later Huntington Beach religious science churches. AT&T brought her north, where she studied with Dr. Margaret Stortz and Reverend Victor in Oakland, and she was a Sunday school teacher there, and she became a practitioner and a minister. Reverend Kathleen graduated from the Holmes Institute in 2003, and that was the same year that she founded God at Play Virtual Ministry. It's a CSL Teaching Chapter focused on encouraging all to see the vastness of God's playground. She holds master's degrees in accounting and international finance, consciousness studies, spiritual peacekeeping, and fun. She's participated as a founding member of CSL's Spiritual Activism Committee, and today she serves on CSL's Ethics Committee. Reverend Kathleen enjoys time with family and friends and deep discussions of the divine. And now give a welcome to Reverend Kathleen Geier.
Thank you, Reverend Jerry. What he forgot to mention was that Reverend Jerry and I were in school together in San Diego, the Holmes Institute, right? So it's been a wild and crazy journey for both of us in our ministry. So as one of my dogs just emphasized, they were quiet through everything except when I start talking. The dogs, you know, for me, the dog is God spelled backwards. So sometimes Mr. Tanner, who's talking right now, has emphasis, and I apologize. I'm going to step away for a second and I'll be right back. I really apologize for this.
I think, Kathleen, what you will understand is almost everybody on here has dogs. So
Okay.
They all understand. Louise has a dog that barks. Joanne has a dog that barks at everybody that comes on the thing. So you're right
Yes.
in the right community.
Yay, I love it. So, you know, when Reverend Jerry asked me if I was available, of course I said yes, and that was a few months ago. And the theme for CSL, as he said, is grounding beyond the beginning. And grounding is important to all of us. And I wouldn't be serving any of us right now if I didn't say, and how powerful the need for grounding is in light of what we've just witnessed this year, from January 1st until now, okay? And I'm mindful of one of my spiritual teachers, Nana Hartzell, who taught us that the events of the world, the news events of the world, are a perfect time for us to practice our prayer. The news is actually a prayer request. And so how does that really play into grounding, and how do we keep ourselves grounded and focused on the principles of religious science that we know? And the principles, as Reverend Jerry had spoken about, is that we're all one people. There's one God, regardless of the name, regardless of the entry we take into that principle. And so I'm going to talk about some ancient wisdom because that's what it is. I'm going to get you involved by having you do some practices that may bring you back to grounding. I mean, we all have our own practices, but these are just to give you other ideas. And then we're going to refocus on the affirmation that says, today I am forever one with all. That's going to be our affirmation that we carry forward. Today I am forever all with one. And what does that mean? You know, in 2000, the religious science came together in a convention and they came up with a mission statement. We believe in a world that works for everyone. Okay, it's not my way, it's not your way, it's thy way. A world that works for everyone. And how do we get there? We get there by in ourselves seeking the kingdom first, seeking God first. And you know, I'm going to use some biblical quotes. I'm going to use them as I was raised with them. And so I apologize if I say kingdom or queendom or what, because I'm just getting us back to being grounded in who and what we are. Okay. So seek thee first the kingdom of God. We believe in the triune nature of God, God in me, as me, through me, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And how we know that that's to be true is, and again, I said this was going to be interactive. What I'd like you all to do is just take a deep breath. Breathing in God, and breathe God into the sole of your feet. Because all of me is God, I'm not the all of God. And then exhale into God. This is a technique for grounding. Then breathe in again and put your hand on your heart. Because there you can feel the indwelling God. You can feel it with the beat. And then breathe, exhale into God. And then one more time, breathe in. Fulfilling the triune nature of God. In me, as me, through me, as we exhale. Okay? Simple technique to grounding, to get you back in contact with seek ye first the kingdom of God. Because Jesus told us, I and God and the Father are one. Those are part of the principles that we know. I and the Father are one. Most of us have heard the song. Most of us know the quote. I look to the hills from which my good comes. The Bible says hills. Some of us know it as heaven. And the reason is because of the translation, the Sanskrit translation. But if we look up, Jerry and I were in a class in July during the summer with Dr. Kathleen, and she reminded us about looking up. If you look up to that place where the ceiling meets the wall, if you look up to that place where the ceiling meets the wall, that too will ground you, because I look up from which my good comes. And the way you know that this is true is if we were to look down right now, if we were to look down at our feet and say, I am so excited. How's that feel in your body? If we were to look straight ahead and say, I'm so excited, how does that feel? Where does it land in your body? But if we look up, I look up and say, I'm so excited. There's a difference, and you should feel that in the different parts of your body. So as we have all of the things going on TV, you know, some of us are spending time on TV. I'm not spending a lot of time on Facebook. I'm not spending a lot of time in social media right now because that's energy I don't choose to bring in. But I am spending a lot of time in prayer. I am spending a lot of time looking up and saying, Lord, help us. You know, what is the right answer right now? And the truth of it is, I also am looking at saying, what's going on in the world that's going on inside of me? Because if we really believe what's going on, if we really believe the teachings of religious science, what's going on in the outer world is going on in the inner world. And it's just a reflection of us. And so what I know personally for myself, I started the year with a different sermon for today. I started the morning with a different sermon for the day. And Jerry and I both know that from when we write our sermons to the time we deliver them. They change, they shift and change because I shifted and changed. So before the week, this past week, I started the year on a fast. I started the year on a dry fast, which means that you take no water in through your mouth, but your body produces water and you don't eat. And it was a 7-day fast. And the reason I chose to do this was I wanted a clearing. I wanted to start the year anew. I wanted to not be addicted to sugar, not be addicted to salt, not be addicted to coffee. I wanted to redo my digestive system. I wanted to redo my immune system, okay? I wanted to start anew. And I came off of that fast on Monday. So my 7th day was Monday. And it's an interesting process that I'll talk to anybody about it offline. But the point is, what do we do every day to renew our walk with God? That's what the ancient teachers did. That's what the wisdom that Ernest Holmes brought forward when he gave us the religions that he knew about at the time in the science of mind. But the truth of the matter is, there's a thin thread, actually a thick thread, a golden thread that runs through all of us, regardless of the religion we tack our name to, regardless of the name we tack to God. There's one creator and we're all equal in that creator's eyes. So if we truly believe that Jesus and I are one and that we're focused on doing God's work in the world because we are expressing as God and God is experiencing through each of us, how can we be the peace and calm that comes out of what's going on today in our outer world? So Reverend Jerry doesn't know this, but the truth of the matter is when I was in ministerial school, I realized that I'm really a historian. I'm really a history buff, I should say. And what I learned is that in the decades within a century, all repeat themselves. And they repeat themselves to be healed. And the easiest example that I can give all of you to this is the civil rights. Most of us know, some of us don't know, that the American Revolution really started when King George said, "No more slavery in my colonies. And if there's slavery, if you refuse to do this, I'm going to tax you." In the American history lessons, we were taught taxation without representation. But the truth of it is, we had the North and South already fighting during that time period, and they said, "Hell no, King George. We're not doing what you say. Hell no." And pardon my language. And so thus the American Revolution and the founding of this country. The greatest theologian document was created with that founding, by those founding fathers, when they said, all men are created equal, endowed by their creator. Now, if we look at history, I wasn't considered a man. Lots of people weren't considered man, but that's the piece of paper for democracy. A theologian statement is something that goes beyond time and space. So that was done in the 1760s, 1770s. So let's fast forward 100 years. Now we're in the 1860s, 1870s, and we have something called Civil War. And the Civil War comes about. What comes about in 100 years is anything that wasn't resolved 100 years before puts its face up to be resolved. So there was some progress made. Then we move forward 100 years in the 1960s and the 1970s, and we have something called the Civil Rights Movement. Again, to resolve that King George letter. Bravo for King George for saying no more slavery. Okay, but it still hasn't been resolved. The reason I point this out is because I want to point out who we are in the 20s. In the 1820s, we had the Alcotts who created, you know, we all know that one from Little Women. He wrote the book Little Women. But in his dining room, he had a friend called Emerson. He also had a friend called Thoreau, and they discussed the values of the world in raising consciousness. And then Thoreau went out to the pond and he wrote his book, he had his thoughts. But do you realize that Thoreau was actually a servant in that house? He had to sit outside the dining room, but he was invited to sit outside the dining room because he had the most provocative thoughts. And one of the things that Thoreau did was he threw himself in jail. He threw himself in jail to end slavery. And he threw himself in jail because he says, if one person would admit this is wrong, it can heal the world. And his buddy Emerson came along and said, what are you doing? That's not going to happen, and bailed him out. Okay, now I'm giving you the fast and dirty view of the world, but these are facts that happened. And I know Reverend Jerry knows it because he's chuckling a little bit, because this is the first time you heard the story this way, right? Well, that's what God at Play is all about, is telling the story from a different perspective. Okay, so you have the 1820s, where you have the transcendentalist method happening. There's one God. There's one God. And Emerson's considered one of the founding teachers of religious science, somebody that Ernest Holmes looked to. So now let's move into the 1920s. In LA, you know, I'm fortunate I was raised in California. I'm fortunate I was raised in the United States, but there was a lot of spiritual awakening happening to the point that the world came here. The world came here. And you have Ernest Holmes, who writes this book called The Science of Mind. He's taken all of the religions together and he says, we're all one, regardless of who we call our God, regardless of who we call our creator. And, you know, the truth of the matter is that time period was a consciousness raising. It was consciousness raising in 1820, it's consciousness raising in 1920, and it's consciousness raising in 2020. We're being invited as religious science to walk the original path, the ahas of what Ernest Holmes taught. There's a common ground. We do believe in a world that works for everyone. And how do we get there? And we get there by listening to the other party. We get there by saying, Alex, tell me what your view of a world that works for everyone is. And then it's up to me to listen, to consciously listen, to listen through the eyes of the ears of God. Yes, I have to use my eyes to listen too, to listen through the ears of God. And then hopefully Alex is in turn is going to ask me, Kathleen, tell me what your world looks like that works for everyone. And then we can find a common ground. But if she doesn't ask me, it's not mine to say, this is the way it is. You're wrong. Okay? That's not a world that works for everyone. And that's a world that in different places in the world we're seeing. It's my way or the highway. No, it's not. And it's on us. So I bring this back. We're in the 20s. We're in the perfect time for consciousness, awareness, consciousness arising. And how do I support that as an individual? I support it by being grounded. I support it by how fast do I return to God? How fast do I say heaven and earth are one? And I personally do it through my breath. I personally do it through looking up. I personally do it, Eastern, Western medicine, we talk about chakras, okay? Did you know that you personally can put your chakra back in alignment? And it's really easy. And do you know that we talk about the 7 chakras, but there's 7 chakras or more below us, and there's 7 chakras or more ahead of us. So one of the things that I do is every morning for part of my grounding, I take and I wind my chakras, but I wind them in one place. I wind them at my heart. And the way you wind it is just like you're winding a clock. And your body wisdom will tell you when you're aligned. So if you wanted to individually practice it, you point your finger at your heart and you wind toward the left. You turn your finger toward the left because that is winding clockwise. You turn it toward your left with the intention that all of your chakras are aligned. A way to ground. Gee, you can do that as you're driving. You can do that when you take that breath at a stop sign before you drive forward. You can ground yourself by looking up as you're driving sometimes. You got to keep your focus on what's ahead of you, but you can still look up, okay? So in the morning, my spiritual practice for grounding is to wind my chakras. And then I take my cupped hand and I bring it up. I raise my hand up. My cupped hand, I raise my hand up. I don't raise it down. I zip myself up for the day, for lack of a better term. And the reason you do that is because you want to increase your energy. Do you know that the samurai, when they used to go out to war, do you know why they were such winners? They would look at they would see where they were going. They would check out their geography. They would see the warriors that were approaching them. And they would stand on the hill and they would just wave their hand down. They were disempowering them by waving their hand down. So when we go back to thinking about the beginning of time, where were we? Well, how were we grounded with the beginning of time? There's a lot of information that I just gave you, but we're grounded because we come in perfect, whole, and complete. We come in knowing God. And the reason I know this is true, when my great nephew Kavika was born, I got to see him born. He was one of those that for the first time was a baby that I saw chatting as he came out. So I knew he was enlightened. He was, I had to get on a plane and fly east for AT&T. And while I was gone, the 2 days I was gone, he ended up back in the hospital. And then when I came back, he was crying. He was mumbling, it was really an interesting situation. I picked him up. He was crying in my hands, and I just bent forward and I said, Kavika, tell me about God. I forgot. He stopped crying like that, and he started chatting to me again. The first 6 months of his life, every time I walked into the room, he would stop whatever he was doing, he'd look at me, and he'd chat. And my niece, his mother, says to me, do you understand him? I said, at some point I do. And I looked at him and I said, Kavika, she thinks we're supposed to talk like this. And I looked at her and she already thought I was nuts, right? I looked at her and then I looked back down at him and I said, and she thinks you're tattling on her. And with that, he started chuckling. Okay. But it stopped like a minute's notice. I've done that to every new baby I've held since then. Because they know God. And the truth is, our grounding takes us back to that place. And the Bible tells us to come before us as children, and ye shall inherit the kingdom. Okay? So with that, I'm going to go back to our affirmation. And the affirmation for today, again, is, I am forever one with all life. I am forever one with all life. Please join me in saying that. Today, I am forever one with all life. And what I would invite you to remember is that for me, grounding is prayer work is important. And the news, as I said, gives us an opportunity to pray. But more importantly, what I consciously try to live and understand, and I'll tell you, it's not easy, but I really try to live from a place that all my words are prayers, that all my thoughts are prayers. And I'm mindful of the garden of my mind, that we're all one, that peace is at hand, and that this is just the steps to get us there, what we're experiencing in life right now. Okay. So with that, I'd invite you to close your eye, whatever you do to connect with God. We're going to go back to the breath because that's what I do. And I'd invite you to breathe in God to the very soul of my feet, to my very soul, and exhale into God. And then one more time we breathe in, this time going to our heart, moving out of our heads and into our heart, making that 18-inch journey and gently touching our heart and feeling God's beat right there. And again, we exhale into God. And then one more time, breathing in the all of God into the all of me. Filling every cell of my being. And then exhaling into God. Letting go of everything that no longer serves me in this moment in time. Energies that belong to others. Any thoughts that aren't healthy to my body and soul. And what I know as I speak my word right now, everyone that's hearing it, whether they're live now or they're listening to the recording, everyone that's hearing this word, everyone that's in a sacred place in this moment of time, this day, everyone that's communing with God, it's in that knowingness that I speak my word. And right now, here and now, I speak for the Vallejo community, the Church Community Centers for Spiritual Living. I speak for the God at Play spiritual community. I speak for the leaders of our communities on which we live, and breathe, and play. I speak for our states. I speak for our nation. I speak for the leaders of the world. Knowing that they take the moment to breathe. They take the moment to return to a grounded place. They take the moment to listen to that still small voice and make all of their decisions from that place for the highest good, the best good for all involved. And I know that with each step I take, each step that I invite you to take, I'm consciously aware that I'm a spiritual being walking in a grounded place, walking as God taught me to walk, aligned in knowing, grounded and full, and that I know that each and every one of us knows that we are all one. all life is one. All synoded beings are one. And if this be true for you, I'm going to invite you to give a moment of gratitude. Moment of gratitude. And also, I'm giving gratitude for the doctors of the world, the essential workers of the world. I'm actually going to say I'm giving gratitude to this dis-ease called COVID, which has had me look at what it means to be grounded and to return to God, to constantly return to God. I'm lifting prayers for those that have had COVID, those that have lost members of their family, members of their circle of friends to this dis-ease, and commit to them that I'm part of the cure. I'm part of the cure in my prayer work, in my social distancing, in my readiness to be alive and well. And it's in this place of God's grace and embrace that I just allow it to be. And I ask you to join me in saying, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Wow. Thank you, Kathleen, Reverend Kathleen. You know, it was interesting that you're a historian and I am a kind of a history buff, and I quite often bring in a little bit of history lesson behind my point. So I was sitting in awe, and I was a student as you taught me some new things.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your message, inspiring message, and your techniques of grounding us. It's always good reminders and good practices. We're always doing this practice. And when you talked about the chakras, I used to open my chakras every morning. I haven't done that for a while. So it's a very nice reminder of all the techniques and tools that we have at our disposal to ground ourselves. And they're grounding techniques from the wisdom of the ages and a variety of mystics and spiritual practices. So just again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for.
Oh, it's my delight. So I have a few announcements before I open up the Zoom room for our community gathering. Our annual community membership meeting is at the end of the month, January 31st, 2021. It'll be a virtual meeting on Zoom and Facebook Live at 11:45, right after our Sunday service on this same link. And there will be a letter soon from the board to our general membership with more information about it. And we'll be also sending that information on constant contact to each of you. So watch your emails and look for a message from First Church. Some people don't get the constant contact because it shows up if you get Gmail. It might show up in publishing or something like that. So you just sometimes have to search for First Church and it'll show up. We're going to also, at that meeting, be celebrating our two retiring board members, Karen Jones and Mary McGowan. And then we'll be electing new board members. Now, we've been sending out emails and constant contact messages over the past 6 weeks, inviting interested members to contact the nominating committee if they have an interest in serving on the board. And today, January 10th, is the last day to contact the committee and arrange for an interview. If you're interested, there are a few basic requirements according to our current bylaws. You have to be a member in good standing, support the goals and aspirations of the senior minister and the vision and the direction of the church. You have to attend most regular and special meetings when possible, and you have to administer to the affairs of the church. In addition, board members must have taken a foundation class and preferably 2 additional accredited classes. Now, if you are interested or wish to explore this awesome position of service, please contact one of the nominating committee members and we can provide you with additional information and set up a committee interview. And we have to do this in a very quick process for the time is running out. And we have been doing this over the past 6 weeks. The nominating committee is Reverend Jerry Federley, Alex Richardson, who is the current board president, and Joanne Riggs, who is the past board president. And you can send it to Reverend Jerry Federley at jerry@federley.org, or Alex Richardson at namastefromalex@gmail.com, or Joanne Riggs at riggsjoanne49@yahoo.com. So I have another announcement that I always ask, and it's to ask about supporting our church. And right now I'd like to pull up a screen share and show you our beloved yellow building, which we love, and many of you have been inside. We hope to be back in it as soon as it is safe to do so. Right now, it looks like that is going to be an extended period of time yet. But we need to keep that building healthy, as well as our organization healthy, and keep bringing these messages forward with guest speakers and doing outreach. So please support the church. The firstchurchofvallejo.org is our webpage, and you can do online giving through PayPal, or you can set it up a bill pay with your bank. And if you want to drop a check in the mail, that's also, you can do the First Church of Religious Science, 229 Springs Road, Vallejo, California, 94590. Or if you happen to be in the neighborhood driving by, you can drop it in the bookstore slot. We would really appreciate that as we continue to keep everything going and keep our building healthy. So if you have been watching Facebook Live and right now, you can join us in a community gathering. And if you want to join us on, I believe there's a link in the chat box on Facebook. I think Clark has put it in. And if you're here in Zoom, just stay on and unmute yourself. And I will facilitate. And I only have one request, and that is don't talk all at once. And I guess the subpart is don't talk about politics, because we want to respect the space for the differences of opinions. And so with that, I'm going to invite you to unmute yourselves and join us in a community gathering.
Thank you, Reverend Kathleen.
Hey, you want to move it, Cheryl?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Pick it up and move it over.
And anybody, I'm just going to say, anybody who has speaker view on, they can change to gallery